Howdy, subscribers. It's been a while. I am a little bit different than the last time you saw me, which was a couple of months ago. Our rolling blackouts continue, on and off. There were maybe 8 times I could have worked Cozy, but I decided to tackle some other projects in the meantime. Got busy. We had some Cozy visitors, people who want to build Cozy. So I'm talking about you. Get your act together and start building. But yeah, so it's time. It'll probably be a week or two from the time I record this to the time you see my next video. So sorry for the delay, but it does take many hours for me to make these time-lapse videos. We filled the bottom of the fuselage with some micro that needs to be sanded down. We've already cut our glass there previously for the bottom. So this is actually a cool part of the project. We need to glass the bottom of the fuselage and then start working on glassing the sides. Once that's done, our tub is more or less structurally finished, I think. Save for things like the landing gear and so forth. But at that point, we'll have a tub in which we can sit and that will support human weight. So that'll be pretty cool. Thank you for sticking around. I've noticed that my subscriber count has climbed pretty much at the previous pace since we last spoke. So welcome. I'm sorry I haven't been producing videos at my normal pace. We haven't been building for a while, like I say, work and side projects and so forth. But I'm still here, I'm still very alive, and I'm still very keen to build this plane. So let's get going. this layup was quite a mess. As you would have seen there, the power went out a couple of times while I was doing it, and the camera stopped recording multiple times, including at the end, so you didn't quite get to see the whole process of me doing it. I do have a couple of notes on it that we're going to go into, but I want to say once again that at least winter's over now and we can build. We had this sudden heat wave out of nowhere that has really raised the nighttime temperatures for me to be able to build. At the moment this is curing, this is the next morning, and it's currently almost 30 degrees Celsius, or let's say about 83 degrees Fahrenheit in the shop, so this is curing at quite a nice temperature without me having to heat anything. I did have to mask off the sides here with cellophane wrap or cling wrap, and that ended up being a little bit of a disaster. You would have seen in the time lapses I did it like 2 or 3 times, where it kept coming off, and there was the solution ended up being me just going all the way around the fuselage a couple of times, and that kept the cellophane up by itself so I could come in and edge using the duct tape. The duct tape did go up right up to this step being one of the more difficult, well, I say a step, but it's like this area here being the more difficult part of the layup. You can see I marked 2 lines there. I ended up scissor trimming to this line here, the top ply. The bottom ply I kind of just left overhanging until I was almost done with the whole layup. At that point it was almost like 5 or 6 hours later. By the way, the times quoted in the plans, I don't believe a word of it anymore, because this was supposed to take 3 hours, but it took me 6 into the wee hours of the morning. But at the end of the day, I left this bottom ply overhanging this green tape, which was actually butting up against this cut line here. I came in with a hobby knife and just trimmed it when it was the epoxy was in green stage, where it is kind of hard enough to cut with a knife, but not hard, but not too cured yet to not be able to cut with a knife. So there is like a kind of a perfect zone there, and I ended up to get into the perfect zone on the first ply while I was still finishing up the layup. But what it allowed me to do is just come in with a knife, just put it on that line, butted up against the end of the tape, which was at that point here, and just cut right all the way through, and then just stipple down everywhere where it lifted maybe a little bit during the cut, and then call it a day. Then I lifted the tape, I moved it down a little bit, as you can see there, and then just peel plied the whole lot. So what that's for is for when we're doing the side layup for the side of the fuselage. It obviously has to overlap onto this layup here to provide strength. It needs to bond to it, but we don't want like 4 layers of glass stacked on top of each other here, creating a big joggle in the thing that needs to be smoothed out later during fuselage finishing. So you create like a step there where the bottom ply goes up to there and the top ply goes up into there, and then the next layup onto the side will lap over. The first ply will come all the way to this line, and the second ply will come to that line. That's the plan anyway, so that some of that thickness can, you know, be reduced into steps on both sides. Quite clever, but it was a bit difficult to achieve, especially the scissor trimming up to this line was challenging. When you lift the glass to be able to get a scissor into it to cut it, you don't quite know where the line is anymore. So I found that difficult to do. You can't just cut that with a knife during green stage, because then you'll cut the ply underneath. So challenging, difficult to do. I ended up peel plying this area for straps. There's supposed to be straps there to reinforce the landing gear area that goes onto the bottom of the fuselage here and down onto this bulkhead to provide extra strength. I just plane ran out of time. It was like 4 in the morning by the time I went to bed, so I just wasn't going to do that. I ended up pure playing these. I'll come and sand them nicely, and then I'll do the straps on my own time. This is not in accordance with the plans, but should be fine, I think. Yeah, just a mess of a layup that I think with most of these big layups I've learned my lesson now. The times quoted in the plans, they don't work for me. Maybe they work for Nat Buffer and Bert Jutan, who were experienced plane builders by the time they did this. Maybe some people work differently to me, or I'm not sure where I'm losing this much time, but this takes me double the time that it says in the plans, which is concerning, because things like the wing spars, for instance, are supposed to take all day already, and if it takes me double, I'm not sure what that's going to mean. It's going to be an interesting day for sure. Now, yeah, I do have some trimming to do now. I do have some pulling up of pure ply once this is all cured, so that I can come in and sand things and prepare them for secondary bonding onto the sides. We of course need to install these reinforcing straps that need to go there. And yeah, otherwise we did have one, okay, let's say thankfully we didn't have any defects that I could pick up besides one. And the only defect we had when we did this layup was there's a bubble there. There's some bubbling in this area where the glass didn't lay down into this joggle. I did put this piece of wood here and just put some pressure onto it, and then just kind of left it there lying into this joggle, kind of friction fit, I guess, but it did help somewhat. There was a little bit more lifting here, but at the end of the day I couldn't get it to lie down perfectly. The rest of this joggle for the air brake seemed to, you can see the joggle there. If I get the light on it, you can see that there's a little bit of a trench around that area. The rest of it lay down pretty well. This dryness here is just for pure ply. The pure ply was just trying to get in this area. This wasn't what I was trying to pure ply. Rightly or wrongly, the plans are pretty vague about what exactly should be pure plied here, but I just did what I thought was necessary. Yeah, this joggle also came out very well. No voids here. Perfect for this joggle is for joining the nose cone onto the fuselage. There's a joggle there to keep everything flat once it's joined. You know, that gets it does get epoxied on there, so it will be cured and permanent once it's set in there, and hopefully without a joggle. Yeah, a lot of prep to do this, and I think it came out well. I think the epoxy ratio came out pretty good. I can see one or two areas where maybe it was a tiny little bit too wet, but for the most part, as you can see there, we're getting that nice effect of the fiberglass not being overly wet, and this having a little bit of that grain. You can see the weave quite well. I found the moment the fiberglass gets a bit too wet, it creates these shiny spots on this, and I'm seeing very little of it. It's here and there. You can see it here at the edge where I put down the peel ply. Obviously you put a little bit of epoxy on there, and you can see it makes, actually that did come out pretty well when I'm looking at it through the camera, but you can see little spots there where, like there's a little bit of a glisten where it's a bit rich in epoxy. But I think I got the ratio on here I nailed pretty well. It came out nice and smooth and flat. I'm well chuffed with how this came out. A lot of prep, a lot of marking things on the fuselage. I wanted to dress, like here, I want these circles here are where I wanted to add extra micro fill to get things perfectly flat. Those came out quite well. That worked pretty well to remember where I needed micro fill. There was a line here somewhere as well, but this was all extra micro. It did go a little bit below the level of the bulkheads, so filled that with some extra Same thing here, and it came out perfectly flat and smooth. I'm very, very chuffed. I was a little bit concerned that this would not come out well. Same in this area. I think in the journals of things I wouldn't do again, putting urethane foam onto things is falling out of favor with me. It's really easy to sand, so I know why it was used in this area, because you spend like an hour or so sanding this down to shape, but it is so soft that any tool or a hand or anything that comes close to this stuff that touches it makes a gouge. Right, this stuff is desperately soft. If you just run your finger over it and lift your finger up, there will be the foam dust on your finger. So it was pretty rough looking before I did the layup, and I was a tiny bit concerned about it. The wet micro fill we do over this did do a lot to cover that up, but I felt like it was a little bit touch and go. I wasn't happy with having this soft foam sit here exposed for quite a while I was doing prep and preparing this, and every single time I got a visitor in the shop, I don't know, people just have a natural tendency to try and reach for this stuff. I don't know why, maybe because it looks interesting or soft or whatever, but people just loved running their hands over there. And so when somebody stepped in the door, I would immediately say, please don't touch the green foam. You have to be really careful around it. And yeah, so I wish there was a better way. I really wish there was a better way. PVC foam again, this stuff is quite difficult to sand and form. You know, you do it here on the sides, but that was a mission to do. I don't know how you would get that flatness if not using the urethane, so I guess it's kind of a necessary evil. I have to kind of decide if I still want to make the nose out of the stuff or not. At this point, I'm of two minds. Okay, cool. I've rambled long enough. This was a massive layup. A lot of footage went missing during it, unfortunately. A lot of the footage just came out black because we were working by backup lights when the power went out. It's just one of those things. I couldn't really help it. I was preoccupied with actually doing this layup and finishing it off nicely. But at least you have a chat, and you know pretty much what I did here. Cool. Thanks for subscribing and watching. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll be apace with videos again from this point on.